What's up, YouTube, and welcome in, Bears fans. This is the Lindemann Show, and I am your host, Cody Lindemann. I am back after a multi-week sabbatical. I got sick there for a little bit, was trying to recover, and life happens, but I'm very glad to be back with you, talking Chicago Bears football. On today's show, we're going to talk about the franchise tag, Bears cap cuts, and some candidates who avoided being cut by the Bears, what that might mean for the roster moving forward. Also, the Combine officially kicked off on Monday in Indianapolis. Ben Johnson and Ryan Poles met with the media. Going to talk a little bit about what they had to say. And then obviously, today at 2 o'clock Chicago time, workouts for the Combine kickoff. Let me know down in the comments section what player you are most interested in watching and what you want to see from them. Maybe in the 40 times, what you want to see for them in the bench press, cone test, whatever it is, what player you're watching, and what do you want to see them accomplish at the Combine. Also, in the comments section, if you have any notes about the show, anything you want to see changed, I do put this content together for you guys, so let me know in the comments if there's something you want to see changed about the show, and let me know if you disagree or agree with some of my analysis of both cap cuts and what Ryan Poles and Ben Johnson had to say. Also, please make sure you like and subscribe. Send the show to a friend if they're a Bears fan. Maybe they enjoy some of the content too. If you enjoy it, would greatly appreciate any and all support. All right, that is enough of that. Let's get into some of the franchise tag around the league issues before we dive deeper into the Bears cap cut candidates and some players who have already been cut. So, for the NFL franchise tag, in case you were not aware, the window to franchise tag players opened up back on February 18th at 4 p.m. Eastern Time. It is open until March 4th at 4 p.m. Eastern, so just about 5-6 more days of that open franchise tag window. And then we will obviously have answers about which players are staying where and which players are going to be hitting the open market. Just wanted to talk a little bit about some of the bigger names out there that there is questions surrounding the franchise tag. Sam Darnold, when the window opened, was a bigger question, I think. Now, I believe it's more assumed that he is going to be hitting the open market and free agency. I heard just yesterday, I was listening to a interview with the Vikings play-by-play personality. I can't remember his name, but the play-by-play guy for the Vikings did an interview, and he said he was pretty sure that Darnold was gone and that J.J. McCarthy would be the move going forward. And even that Daniel Jones could start the year if McCarthy's not ready. And then McCarthy would obviously transition in to be the starter. Just a few stats I have about Sam Darnold. He was fifth in the NFL with 4,000. He was fifth in passing yards with 4,319. And he had 35 passing touchdowns. He led the team to a 14-3 regular season record. So if Sam Darnold truly is gone from the Vikings, for the Bears, that could be some addition by subtraction. Having one of the better QBs last year leave your division obviously would be super helpful. Maybe a step back, most likely with J.J. McCarthy being a rookie quarterback coming in, likely would not play up to that level that Sam Darnold did. So could be good news for the Vikings if Darnold truly is out of the division. Also want to talk about a big name I know a lot of Bears fans are interested in. Guard Trey Smith from the Kansas City Chiefs. Trey Smith, obviously the biggest guard candidate. If he hits the open market, he'll be the biggest guard free agent. Obviously, the Bears with a massive need to revamp their offensive line. Trey Smith would be the player that everyone is looking at. He started all 17 games last year. He was a first-time Pro Bowler in 2024. The projection for him is $105.5 million. That's his projected deal, I believe, for a 5-year deal. Some people have even projected him going to the Bears. So obviously would take up a large amount of that free agency money that the Bears have available. We'll talk about cap space here in a few minutes. But Trey Smith could also fill a massive void the Bears have in their offensive line as they are trying to revamp it and rebuild it just in one offseason with Ben Johnson and to protect Caleb Williams better. Another franchise tag candidate I'd like to talk about really quick for the Lions is Carlton Davis. He had 2 interceptions and he had 56 tackles. Obviously, was he was a cornerback for the Lions if you don't recognize the name. Also in the NFC North, obviously. Losing him would be, once again, addition by subtraction for the Bears. Detroit Lions had a great secondary last year. Obviously, he suffered some injuries, but Carlton Davis was obviously a huge part of that if he is a franchise tag candidate. Now, the Packers and the Bears didn't have any notable franchise tag candidates. Obviously, the Bears roster just didn't have any player that is coming up for free agency that was worth putting the tag on. Makes sense. But the Bears did have some players under contract that they wanted to cut, them being Gerald, Everett, tight end, and DeMarcus Walker, defensive lineman / edge rusher. Just a couple quick stats about them. Cutting Gerald Everett, the tight end who was coming over from the Chargers, had some high hopes for him during the season, thought maybe he would become a great pass catcher, a great weapon in the offense, and pretty much did nothing. Now, I don't know how much of that is Everett's fault, how much of that is coaching. Obviously, there's some blame to go around everywhere. If Everett didn't get himself on the field, didn't prove enough at practice, also the coaching staff, especially on the offensive side of the ball, was particularly bad this year. However, the front office didn't think Everett did enough to stick around. It's going to save the Bears just south of $5.5 million. For his season, he had 8 receptions on 13 targets, and that is well below what he's averaged in his career so far. Usually averages 40 receptions on 60 targets, and this is his only season in the NFL without a touchdown. Now, to be fair to Everett, he has had a couple seasons where he's only had 1. He doesn't score a lot of touchdowns. Just hasn't been a huge part of his game. Historically, he only averages 3 touchdowns per year. So he's not a touchdown machine, but to come into the Bears to underperform reception-wise, he averages 32 more receptions than he had this year. He also averages, another 47 targets? Is that right? I mean, a massive discrepancy in both areas. Part of that is coaching. Part of that is probably him not getting on the field. Either way, he is cut, no longer a Bear. Another perhaps more surprising cut, DeMarcus Walker, edge rusher. Obviously, the Bears need better penetration in the backfield. They need to rush the passer better. It's something that has been talked about at length with the Bears. Cutting DeMarcus Walker saves the Bears just north of $4.5 million. He has started his 29 starts in the past 2 seasons. His 29 starts overall. In his past 2 seasons, he has started every game. So something that the Bears team has struggled with, and something, the reason why Tevin Jenkins isn't coming back is because he can't stay on the field. Well, DeMarcus Walker brought that to you. He brought that availability to you. So that's something you're going to lose in DeMarcus Walker. Hopefully, whoever fills his spot, once again, stays healthy, stays on the field, can perform in every game, gets a lot of starts. That's obviously the hope. But DeMarcus Walker has proven that he has that availability as a big factor in his game. And now that's something the Bears have cut ties with. And, you save $4.5 million, but now someone who could reliably be a starter is not going to be there. The other problem, though, is that if you don't produce, you don't get to stay on the roster. So production-wise, when you look at it, He's averaging 3.5 sacks per year. Obviously not great for an edge rusher. Not terrible. I mean, he's getting to the quarterback at least a little bit. On that note, he has 16 QB hits. Not bad. And 8 tackles for loss. So he is getting some pressure on the quarterback. Probably not what the Bears are looking for, especially when it has been a weak point in their game, right? If you're getting pressure up the middle, maybe you can afford to have an edge rusher that doesn't always get to the quarterback. But that's also been a problem for the Bears. So probably going to look to, in the offseason, upgrade at that edge rusher position. Maybe Austin Booker during this offseason and during the time in camps, whatnot. He puts a foot forward. He can become a starter. Maybe the Bears draft someone. We'll talk about it a little bit later, but it is a super heavy edge draft. So kind of see how things progress in that way. Now, a couple other cap candidates that did not get cut. One is Ryan Bates, offensive guard / tackle. It would have saved the Bears $4 million. I'm not super surprised they didn't cut him. If you remember, this is a massive Ryan Poles guy. If you look back through the history books, you remember that Poles tried to sign Ryan Bates about 3 years ago, I believe. Offered him a contract. I think he was a restricted free agent. I think that's what it is. Not super sure. But anyways, the Bills had the opportunity to match whatever offer Ryan Bates got. The Bills did that. Obviously, the Bears missed out on him, and he stayed with the Bills. 2 years later, Ryan Poles finally does get his guy. Ryan Bates trades for him, I think a late-round draft pick. Obviously, last year was his first year with the team. He only started in 3 games throughout the year, so not a lot of statistical information about him. Obviously, one thing you can say is that he didn't play a lot. Wasn't able to stay on the field. He did commit 0 penalties. That's obviously a positive, but when you only play in 3 games, not super compelling, obviously. But I think it's not surprising to me that Bates wasn't cut, because obviously Ryan Poles really values what Bates brings. Obviously, he evaluates his talent super highly. So to me, it's not a big surprise that Ryan Bates was not cut for the cap reasons, and is still on the team. Obviously, with the draft and the revamping of the offensive line, that doesn't mean he's going to start next year. That doesn't mean he's going to be on the team when the year starts, when the regular season kicks off in September. It doesn't mean that at all. But what it does mean is that he's not cut right now. He's on the team. He's probably going to have an opportunity to compete, at least for a roster spot, if not to be a starter. And I think that's something that's not really talked about. Like, obviously, Ryan Poles really, really values Ryan Bates, and no one has talked about his availability, or ability, rather, to come back and compete for a starter spot, whether that's at guard, at center, if the Bears miss out there. So obviously, how free agency plays out and how the draft plays out will very much impact Ryan Bates, but I'm not surprised he was not cut. Another person or player who was maybe on the cut list that did not get cut, Kevin Byard, would have saved the Bears, once again, just under $5.5 million. He started in all 17 games, so once again, has that availability that you're really looking for from players. Obviously, the Bears had a banged-up secondary just a few years ago, had some injuries this year, so to have a safety who is available every single game, ready to start, also kind of has that leader mentality in the locker room, from what I hear. Kevin Byard, exceptional addition to the team. Very glad he wasn't cut, especially with some of the injury concerns of Brisker and how that safety position is going to play out. I really wouldn't feel comfortable cutting any safety. Now, if you had a safety free agent who you let walk, that's a different story, but I wouldn't be comfortable cutting players you currently have under contract to come back and play for you, especially players like Kevin Byard, who I think played pretty well. Obviously didn't have like a flawless or Pro Bowl season, but a very solid player, and once again started all 17 games, had 1 interception, had 2 fumble recoveries, had 2 sacks, also five tackles for losses, and 80 solo tackles. So really making his presence felt. Obviously not in the backfield as much, but he is a safety. So you wouldn't expect him to be in the backfield all that much. Obviously would like the interceptions to go up. I like that he's around the ball. 2 fumble recoveries. Can't recover the football if you're not around the ball. So that's also a nice part about those stats that is kind of in there. Some other cut candidates that did not get cut, just want to mention them really quickly. DeMarcus Robinson, edge rusher. I'm a little bit surprised that he was not cut. He's been on the team for several years and really just hasn't done much. Gets a little playing time in a rotation role as an edge rusher, but really production hasn't been there. So kind of surprised he wasn't cut. Also, I don't know how much money it would have saved the team. I'm assuming he's on a fairly small contract, so maybe the money just wasn't worth it to keep another edge rusher around who can be a rotational piece for cheap. So maybe that was kind of the Bears' thinking there. But wouldn't have been too surprised, and don't think the Bears would have missed too much if DeMarcus Robinson was cut. Another player who was mentioned, Jonathan Owens. Once again, as I just covered with Kevin Byard, I'm very happy the Bears are not cutting safeties they currently have under contract. Brisker missed a majority of the end of the season there with a concussion, obviously never made it back on the field. So seeing what he does moving forward, I think will be very interesting. Zach Pickens, also defensive tackle, was not cut. I think he's going to be competing for a roster spot. When you consider the Bears, once again, they're trying to revamp the offensive line. Also, they're trying to revamp the defensive line. That's something that has been talked about a lot. So Zach Pickens, who quite frankly has made minimal to zero impact on the team. Javon Dexter obviously gets the starter role over him. Pickens has been pretty disappointing, in my opinion. I thought he was going to have more of an impact, at least be more rotational. I think he got some playing time at the end of the year after Billings got hurt, but just really not doing enough on the Bears team to solidify a roster spot. Maybe he makes the team. I'm not saying he doesn't, but saying I think he will be fighting for a roster spot after additions are made in the draft and in the offseason. Final player I want to talk about really quick, Tyler Scott, wide receiver. Obviously, I'm happy he's going to stay on the team just because you're going to be losing Keenan Allen. I think Tyler Scott has some really good skills. I think he can be a decent wide receiver if he is coached up properly, and if he can just do all the things wide receivers do just a little bit better, right? Be an NFL caliber wide receiver. Obviously, going to be really hard to get on the field in front of Rome Odunze, in front of DJ Moore, in front of Keenan Allen. Going to be really hard to get on the field with those guys, but would have hoped Tyler Scott is maybe a little bit more effective than DeAndre Carter, right? Carter could play all three wide receivers positions, which is why he, I believe, was preferred a little bit more by the coaching staff, but would love to see Tyler Scott on the field more in the upcoming year. Not sure how much opportunity he's going to get, but perhaps with Keenan Allen likely moving on from the Bears, likely not coming back, Tyler Scott might be able to take that number 3 wide receiver position and run away with it if he has a good camp. And if the coaching staff uses him better, right? I think usage was a massive problem for the last coaching staff. So excited Tyler Scott wasn't cut. I want to see more from him this year and really see if he has an opportunity to prove himself as an NFL player. All right, last thing I want to cover really quick. The Bears obviously cutting Everett and Walker has opened up more salary cap space. The team is up to nearly $80 million in salary cap. That is the 4th most among NFL teams. Just 4 teams ahead of them. With I think 3 teams actually, since they're 4th, right? 3 teams ahead of them with open cap space. Obviously, the Bears hoping that amount of cap space allows them to sign some really prominent free agents to fix their offensive, defensive line needs and to lock up the trenches a little bit better, since the Bears said they were going to do that in previous seasons and then never did. The Bears are now looking at a situation where they have to do that. One thing I want to mention here before we get into the next portion, the second half of the show, before we talk about combine pressers, one thing Ryan Poles did say is that he wanted to cut Everett and Walker before the combine so the reps could be down there talking to other teams. I think that it's good practice, right? Doing right by players, even when you're going to cut them, but being like, hey, we're going to cut you before the combine. I know getting cut isn't fun, but we're going to try to, make it as easy for you as possible to go find another team, right? We're not going to hold you around, keep you, keep your agents and representatives out of all these important NFL spaces leading up to the NFL season and then cut you, right? That might happen because players aren't going to make the roster, right? But as far as salary cap cuts, doing it before the combine, letting their representatives meet with people, really like to see the Bears doing right by players, because I think it makes players more interested in either returning or free agents coming to the Bears when they're like, hey, even players that they are no longer going to have on the roster, they're doing right by. I think it's a small thing, but I think it's something that players and agents and representatives think about way more than the average fan does, and I think it matters to them. So that's going to wrap up the cap cut, the Bears cap situation. We're going to move on to combine pressers here in just a moment or two, but first, want to remind you, make sure you are liking and subscribing to the channel. Really appreciate that support. It's super easy to like, just one click, super easy to subscribe. Hit the red button down there, follows the show, lets you know when I put out new stuff, and make sure you comment. Want to hear who you guys, once again, are watching at the Combine this week, who you want to see do what exercises, what you want to see from them in what you want to see them do, right? What is it that you want to have them prove at the Combine that would make you comfortable with them becoming a Bear? Also, once again, if you have any notes on the program, things you want to see done differently, things you want to change, anything you disagree with on my analysis of cap cuts, people who maybe you think deserve to be here or who shouldn't be here. Also about to break down the Combine pressers from Ryan Poles and Kevin Warren. So if you disagree with some of my analysis there, of course, feel free to let me know. Like, hey, no, I don't think that's what that meant. But make sure you drop a comment down there. Let me know. I will certainly be reading those and reacting to those. So let me know what you think. All right, that is enough of that. Let's move on to some of the Combine presser here. As we are running low on time, I'm going to try to get through this fairly quickly here. Something that Ryan Poles mentioned, obviously a lot of Bears fans have been, in the past, not happy with how aggressive the team has been. There's some mixed reaction on how people feel about Ryan Poles. He historically has set his number, has not gone above that to go get a player. Some people are like, hey, you got to pay more in free agency. Some people are like, are more happy when you set your market for a player and you don't go above that. Some people really respect that. So something Ryan Poles said is the clearer vision, the more aggressive you can be. So Ryan Poles obviously answering a question about how aggressive he's going to be at the top of the market in free agency. And that's important, obviously, because Trey Smith is going to be at the top of the market, right? Drew Dahlman, I believe, is the center's name from Atlanta. He's going to be one of the top centers on the market, if not the top center. So asking questions about what you're going to be willing to do to spend at the top of the market is important. And Ryan Poles opening that door a little bit more is inspiring. I don't know if I want to say inspiring, but inspires a little hope. Obviously, you want the Bears to be willing to pay top dollar for top athletes and an offensive lineman. An offensive lineman, of course, is one of the spots where you're going to have to spend top dollar. There's just not a lot of offensive linemen who become available every year. And when they do become available, and I'm not just talking offensive linemen, I'm talking top tier, very talented offensive linemen, obviously don't come available super often. And when they do, you're going to have to compete with a lot of different teams to get them, which means you're going to have to pay a lot of money for them. So Ryan Poles opening that door with, once again, the comment, the clearer the vision, the more aggressive you can be, hopefully lends credence to the fact that they will be very much in the mix, at least for one of those players, if not both of them, and can really start revamping the Bears' offensive line in free agency, a place they're going to have to do it. You cannot do it all through the draft, especially if you're looking to add 3 offensive linemen. Even 2 rookie offensive linemen could be very challenging for the Bears if that's the way they try to move forward. So want to see them obviously add in free agency. Moving forward, Ryan Poles also said he would be willing to spend on players when they checked all the boxes. So once again, just lending more credence, more hopeful notion that the Bears will be willing to spend on those players that they feel are top tier, on those players they feel, are going to be the ideal athlete, the ideal person, the ideal player to fill whatever role it is. In free agency specifically is going to be hopefully more on the Bears' agenda, willing to spend. Another thing Ryan Poles said, which I think is obvious, but maybe we don't think about as much as we should, is that the free agency and the draft, both, as he put it, they have the supply for what the Bears need, right? A very edge-heavy draft class here, which obviously the Bears need more pass rushers. Obviously, a lot of D tackles too that are very good, and some offensive linemen at the top of the draft, right? So Ryan Poles pointing out that what the Bears really need is in high supply during the offseason, free agency in particular, and in the draft. So obviously Poles is going to have a lot of different players to choose from, which should be a good thing, right? It means you can pick probably bad players and bad fits. Like there's more players that just wouldn't work here. But with more players available, hopefully it means some players won't be priced as high. I doubt it's going to work that way, but right, supply and demand. Hopefully with a higher supply, the demand just isn't as great for some players, and the Bears can get a few bargains, at least contract-wise in free agency, and then hopefully with a higher supply, the Bears are able to get some more talented players in positions of need later in the draft, especially in that second and maybe even third round, those day 2 picks. Getting higher talented players in positions of need would be perfect for the Bears. Moving on, Ryan Poles did address Braxton Jones. He said, quote, "We got to see how he comes on the other side of this," end quote. Poles said it a little bit weird. Want to quote him word for word. That's exactly what he said. But he's just talking about where Braxton Jones is, and I think he talked about, we need to get him back on his feet. We need to get him rehab from this injury. We need to get all these different things done. So some of those comments led me to believe that maybe the Bears are even more open to a tackle than I originally believed. I know everyone's like, you need 4 new offensive linemen. Darnell Wright can stay, but everyone else should be moved on. I doubt the Bears do that just because of what a massive undertaking it would be. It would probably mean 2 rookie offensive linemen. Now, as long as you don't stick them close together, maybe with some, as long as you don't put them next to each other, maybe you can have some more success, putting one at guard, on a right guard and one at left tackle. However you do it, if you can kind of spread them out, maybe it's not as big of an issue, but two rookie offensive linemen in front of Caleb Williams would make me really nervous, just because rookies struggle in the league. So I figured that Braxton Jones would for sure be at left tackle next year. Those comments make me less sure. I know we're running out of time here pretty quickly, so I just want to mention a few things Ben Johnson said. He sounded very excited about his staff and the staff that Ryan Poles has put together. He said they're going through position by position to outline what the ideal athlete would look like for each position, kind of how they're approaching the draft. He said he's going to be breaking down every position to the studs, going back to fundamentals. Talked a lot about doing that with Caleb Williams there, so a reason to be concerned. Maybe we can cover that later. When asking about Declan Doyle, Ben Johnson was told that Declan Doyle is another Ben Johnson. Once again, Ben Johnson believes that the offensive line can be rebuilt in one offseason through free agency, through the draft. He says other teams have done it. Talked about analytics, how he wants to use them as a tool, which I was very excited by. I think if you use analytics just as if you use analytics only, and that's the only thing you go by, you lose all the feel for the game. You lose that coaching, that person, just that human aspect, where they're like, hey, I just feel differently here. We're gonna do something a little bit, unconventional or whatever. If you just use analytics, you could put together a football team with a computer, and you can make all your big coaching decisions with a computer as well. So I like that Ben Johnson views analytics as a tool and not as the end-all, be-all. All right, with that, I'm going to wrap up the show. I want to appreciate each and every one of you for watching. I want to, once again, implore you to like, comment, subscribe. Make sure you let me know down in the comments who you're watching at 2 p.m. today at the Combine and who else you want to see throughout the weekend. And for that, until next time, for The Lindemann Show, I'm Cody Lindemann, signing off.